Hey, everybody, welcome to Having Had Podcast. Um, Real quick before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to thank everyone for all of the support. It's been a little overwhelming and um, a lot of good validating messages that kind of let me know I'm on the right path, or, at least this wasn't the worst idea ever. I still have no idea what I'm doing, but it's a little bit better today than the last time I did this. So, baby steps. Um, as we do this, uh, you know, if you've been listening, you know that some of the guests are going to be from the music business, some are going to be from the film business. Today's guest, I know from the film business, but not to shoehorn him into the category of more of a character. He's just one of the really interesting people with an interesting story I've met along the way. So I hope that we both learn a little bit more about him and how he ended up who he is today from today's episode. So I'm going to use his government name. Today's guest is Brendan Craighill, but I know him as Snake. Pretty much everybody knows him as Snake. My kids know him as Mr. Snake because we visited his house a few weeks ago out in the desert in California, and they're good Southern boys that use Mr. and Mrs. So he's Mr. Snake. So welcome everybody to the show, Mr. Snake.
Hey, how's it
Yay.
going, man? Yes, or Mr. Dumpster, as some
Mr.
people
Dumpster. Yeah, that
call
too.
me. Yeah.
Snake Dumpster. So, I only met you just about 3 years ago on a series called 1883 that we'll get more into later. But, um, so my time knowing you isn't as long as some of the others I've had on here. Um, but I kind of know your story. But just to get started, how and where did you grow up? What was your early childhood like? What was Little Snake like?
Uh, Um, I grew up in Virginia mostly. My dad was in the army, and I come from a big military family. Mostly Navy, but my dad was colorblind, so he had to go into the army because I guess they won't. You got to be able to see colors to be in the Navy for some reason. So we moved around a lot, but I am the youngest of three. So by the time I came around, we weren't doing a ton of moving around. I think I lived when I was like 3 or 5 in Kansas for a minute, and then like
11
North
words?
Carolina for a hot second, and
Wow.
then back to Virginia. And then, I grew up in Virginia. Those are all my memories in Virginia, till I was 18 when I very quickly left after after high school. I was one of the kids who didn't want to be anywhere near where I grew up just because
Yeah.
it was, where I grew up, and I wanted to go explore and check out what else the world had to offer.
And you were in Northern Virginia near DC?
Yeah, we grew up in the suburbs of Fairfax County, Herndon, to be more specific.
Yeah.
Lived in Herndon most of the time I was in Virginia, but then when I was 14, my parents moved us out to Percival, which is now not so much in the middle of nowhere, but then in 94
It was the
was kind of,
Boondocks.
yeah, it was the boonies, and it was 45 minutes away from all my friends and everything I knew. It's amazing. I was thinking about it earlier how our concept of time changes as we get older. And when I was 14 and moved to Percival in the middle of nowhere, it felt like an eternity till I was 18 so
Yeah.
I could leave. And and now I look back on it, I was like, God, I only spent 4 years out there. That's nothing. I spend 4 years working on a project at home, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll get to it, but
Did
um,
you did you have to move schools when you went out there?
yes, I was kind of a troubled kid,
Yeah.
not like a bad kid. Um, did I do some bad shit and get in trouble for it? Yes, but I wasn't, that bad. I was just kind of a troubled kid. I had, trouble. I had a big problem with depression and stuff like that when I was younger, and I had a really hard time trying to figure out what that all meant and how to deal with it. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain, and a lot of people, me included, spend many, many years trying to figure out how to cope with that. And it's like, I don't think it ever changes. You just learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And, or you medicate or whatever it is. And I did medicate for a number of years, but after, a while of kind of deciding that wasn't for me. But, so it was a difficult childhood. So I bounced around quite a bit from school to school. Actually went to a boarding school. It was my first high school experience in Pennsylvania, like one of those, prep schools, like all boys,
Yeah.
you live there, coat and tie type of shit.
Yeah.
That obviously didn't stick with me
Yeah.
for very long. So that was a quick kind of visit. And then I moved to a public school and then, I bounced around a bit.
Gotcha. I know that, I mean, I have the same experience of growing up with what I know now to just be, clinical depression, but not even knowing what it was. I just
Yeah.
felt like I was, the square peg in a round hole, whatever analogy you want to use. But
Yeah.
I know for me, it went straight to medicating, even at a very early age,
Yeah.
and that was the only way I could feel right. But I didn't have the experience of moving around, and I know, my wife is a military brat. She's an Army brat. Her dad was a warrant officer, and
Right.
she grew up moving every 4 or 5 years, and her and her siblings talk about the opportunity to reinvent themselves every time they moved and take on a new persona because it was all new people.
Right. Right.
But in addition to that, having to go through that, you know, once again, being lonely and feeling desolate, trying to fit in, all that crap. And if you have that issue of, just regular old clinical depression, it gets magnified.
It's such a weird, you know, it's like the human brain is so bizarre, because it's like, why are you the way you are? What the fuck is wrong with you? And it's just like, well, there's all sorts of shit going on there, It's like, and I was fortunate enough that my parents recognized it at a very young age. And so I mean, I think I saw the same psychiatrist from when I was 5 till I was 18,
Yeah.
but there were a number of other ones that mixed in there as well. I think at one point I was seeing 4 different therapists because I was kind of a fucked up kid. Um, but it takes a long time and a fuckload of work,
Yeah.
to kind of learn how to deal. And I still have fucking days where I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
I'm just like, what am I doing, man? I was like, is this even worth it? It's just like,
Yeah.
you just feel like giving up,
Yeah.
and so I don't think it ever really goes away. I think it's just one of those things you have to constantly pay attention to. And on the hard days, you really have to pay attention to it and kind of go,
Yeah.
okay, this is not how the world is. This is just a bad moment. This is a bad time. Maybe I'm having a shitty day. Tomorrow could be better, So
Yeah.
I think, a lot of people could benefit from that kind of
Yeah.
encouragement.
Yeah. We don't always have to believe what our brain's telling us.
No,
So now that we started off on such a happy note,
I know. Jesus
oh,
Christ.
and I forgot to say at the beginning, there will be curse words in
Oh
this
yeah. Sorry.
episode,
I cuss a lot. Apologies.
which is fine. So you graduated high school.
Yes, graduated high school from like one of those not high school schools. It was like the bad kid.
Yeah.
What do they
Hey,
call
me
that?
too.
Yeah,
I dropped out and got my GED. So my diploma
yeah.
says state high school.
It
It
was
was,
actually the school I went to. I actually saw when we were in Texas, when we were in Fort Worth. I saw like an offshoot of that, like another branch of it out there, and that was the first time I'd seen it since I was 18. I was like, holy shit! It was Richard Milburn High School. It was like a school for
yeah,
troubled kids.
awesome.
So
So how quick after graduation did you take off?
I think it was 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I got in a bit of trouble when I was 17, so I was on probation for breaking into cars and stealing shit. And that was the last time I'd have stolen anything because
Yeah.
I realized how shitty of a thing stealing somebody else's shit is.
How not
So,
awesome it is.
yeah, how not cool it is. And so that was the last time I actually stole anything. And I was on probation for a while and house arrest and all that shit. And my probation ended, and then I graduated high school, and I was just like, couldn't squeeze my shit in my car fast enough to get out of there.
What was your plan?
I mean, my initial plan was I snowboarded a lot, or I was getting more into snowboarding, when I was 17, 16, 17, 18. And I wanted to snowboard. I just wanted to do that for a living. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go snowboard. And my initial plan was to move to Colorado. And my brother had previously, the year previous, moved to Utah to go to college out there and to snowboard. And my parents were like, that's a cool plan. Why don't you go to Utah? I was like, your older brother's there. You can stay
At
with him.
least you'll have that,
Yeah,
safety
I
net
didn't
of
know
your brother
anybody in
there.
Colorado. I had this like dream of like, I'm gonna go to Colorado. It's gonna be awesome. I had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, I moved to Utah. Um,
With the
and
support of your parents?
yeah, they were like, well, what are you gonna do? My dad was very like kind of A type kind of
That's why I was
person.
asking. I know your dad was an officer and,
He was a colonel
worked
in
at
the
the
army,
Pentagon.
and yeah, very. His father was very, and my dad was a little more laid back, but it was, what you have to go to school. What are you gonna? You have to go to college. What are you gonna do? And this is back when going to college kind of meant something. It was getting to the point where it's like, doesn't matter. Now I think it's a waste of money unless you want to be like a lawyer or a doctor or something like
Yeah,
that.
something medical or yeah.
Yeah, where you need a degree. I think it's, or you want to further your education. But so I was just like, yeah, 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 I'm gonna go, but I want to take a year off and kind of get my bearings. And I had never had any plans of going.
Yeah.
Um, and they were like, okay, okay, and so they, gave me a pat on the back and said good luck. And yeah, I moved to Utah and started snowboarding and dicking around, partying a lot, but I was young and free, and it was the first time I'd been on my own, really. So,
Did you start working immediately or
yeah, I think my brother got me a job at the Canyons Resort as a ski resort. Um,
y'all are in Park Cities?
yeah, yeah, in Park City. We were living in Salt Lake, and you drive up to Park City and work there. And you get a free, pass for that as well. So it was the incentive to work there was, pretty high. I was like, yeah, well, I can work here, I can make a little bit of money, pay my rent, and I get a free fucking pass on the weekends or whenever I'm not working, I can ride. Um, so a lot of people did that, and I'm sure still do. But yeah, I made snow. I was a snowmaker for 6 years, 6 seasons, and I operated a snow cat. And then in the summer, a couple summers, I did trail crew, which is like hiking around the mountain with a chainsaw and, cutting down trees and
Easy work.
super easy stuff. I actually almost cut my thumb off on one of those summer days. We're on a super steep run, and you have to like trim all the stuff in the summer, otherwise it grows. And when it snows in the winter, you've got like branches and shit sticking up through the run. So we'd go through with brush cutters, which is like a weed whacker with a metal blade,
Yeah.
and cut all this shit down. And I slipped and fell on my blade, and it lopped into my thumb. And I was just like, I gotta go to the hospital. And they were just like, damn it.
It's not awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I did that for a while. And that was cool, I guess, until I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. What was next after that? You
Mm.
said at one point you legitimately were thinking of trying to be pro snowboarder or
Yeah, that was kind of the idea, like moving out there was, I'd watch all these snowboard videos and look at all the snowboard magazines, idolize these guys who were, doing it for a living. It's like these
yeah.
guys were going around the world, you know, hitting big jumps and rails and half pipe and shit like that. And I was like, that's so awesome. I want to do that, So I busted my ass and, tried to get better every year. And then my brother and I started going to Oregon in the summers to Mount Hood. And our first year, we just worked at the mountain timberline, as like cooks or some shit. And then, the following year, we got jobs at a snowboard camp called Windbells. And I was my brother was a digger, which is like somebody who you shape like the jumps and the
Yeah.
half pipe and shit and salt the lips, because it's summer, so everything's slushy. So you have to salt them every so often, and so they can get nice and hard. Otherwise, they get squishy and it's no fun. So he did that, and then my first year there, I think I was 19 years old. They hired me on as the groundskeeper, And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And it's like,
Sure.
yeah, no problem. I got you. Responsibility, I'm on it. And it was very, I wasn't really supervised. They'd kind of just like, here, you got to do this and make sure the grass that, it was a big property, and I had to take care of like the employee housing area, which was about a mile away from where all the kids stayed. And I had to take care of that as well. So it's like mowing the lawn, like doing the garbage, like doing shit like that, groundskeeping stuff. And I just did not do any of it. I don't think
Yeah.
I snowboarded, skated, and partied, and then I think I got fired. And I did get a job back the following year as a coach because they saw that I was good with kids and that I could teach kids and like we had a good time, stuff like that. And they're like, you know what, that's fine, be a coach. And so I did that for a number of years. So I would do that, bounce back and forth from Oregon in the summers, snowboarding, then go back to Salt Lake and snowboard all winter, and then go back to, and just do that. Did that for like 4 or 5 years. And I got pretty good, I had sponsors and stuff, but I wasn't pro, I didn't make any money at it. Um, I just get free gear and like passes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, which was cool, because it's an expensive sport, so I didn't have to pay for any of my stuff,
Yeah.
which was nice. But then I don't know, he's like, the more you do something, or I don't know, for me, the closer I got to that dream, the more I realized I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do this. I was like, this isn't as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be, and I was just partying a ton. And I was like, this kind of sucks. And I can't remember when it was, but I got introduced to motorcycles. I always liked motorcycles.
That was
You know,
where I was going next.
I mean, every kid, every boy is like, oh my God, motorcycles.
Absolutely.
They're awesome. They're loud, they're cool. I can't remember exactly when, but I got my first, I think I was 23. A buddy of mine was selling a 1973 CB350 for like $300. This thing was a turd. It was a total piece of shit. It was, cafe'd, kind of, somebody, did a really crappy wiring job on it. If you sat on it one way, it'd start to smoke, from electrical shit. So it's like, and I didn't know anything about mechanics or wiring or anything, any of that shit.
Yeah.
Um, so one day I thought that I would, really, I'm gonna fix this thing up, and I tore it all the way apart. I started like taking the motor apart, and like I had no idea what I was doing, no
Yeah.
clue what to do or the
And this
process
is
of doing it.
this is before YouTube where you could look it up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This
Or
was
Google.
in 2003, 2004, probably 2004, 2005. Um, yeah, so I was just doing that, and then I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I gave up, and I just kind of put it all in crates. And then soon after that, in 2005, I didn't want to be in Utah anymore, and I moved to a buddy of mine lived in California, and he was like, "Dude, I got a spare room if you want to move down here. I'll get you a job at this warehouse I'm working at." And I was like, "All right." So I
So
moved down.
there was no, not to get into film work yet, but there was no film work when you were in Utah. You didn't start there.
No, no. I mean, I liked movies and TV shows and stuff like that, but like that working in that industry didn't really register with me. Like, oh, that's a job, Like, of course
Yeah.
it's a job, but I didn't really put that together and didn't really. I wasn't introduced to it. I didn't have any interest in it. Um, so I just wanted to move to California and
Gotcha.
moved down to where I first lived in California was Laguna Hills, not Laguna Beach. Very different. Um, it's more inland and not as cool. Um,
Inland from Laguna Beach,
yeah, so
so
it's just
still
kind of
south.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just farther inland, farther east. But I lived there for like 6 months and realized Orange County was not the place for me. And I had a couple of friends who lived in LA, and I'd been to LA like a handful of times to hang out with them. And every time I went, it got harder and harder to leave. I was like, oh my God, this place is fucking amazing. And I just had a blast every time I went up there, and I didn't want to leave. So eventually I moved in with a dude up there, and convinced my buddy Ratty, who was living in Utah, one of my snowboard buddies, who also got into motorcycles. I convinced him to move out, and he just packed his shit and got on a plane.
Just
I
like
picked
that.
him up from the airport, and like I think we shared a room for a long time, and it was living in Hollywood in this tiny shitty apartment, like sharing a bedroom, and you know eating shitty food because we had no money, and we both wound up getting jobs at it's not there anymore, but the Standard in Hollywood. It's this Holly. It's like
Oh,
this.
on
Yeah,
Sunset, right?
yeah, yeah, right on
I know.
Sunset, and
Yeah.
it was like at the time it was kind of a cool hip.
Yeah, it was. I remember
Place.
because on rock tours, that was I was touring in that whole era, and every time we came through LA, we either stayed at the Riot House on Sunset, the old
Uh,
Hyatt,
yeah,
across from where they tore it down now, but the House of Blues that was on Sunset,
yep.
which was right up the street there, or
It
we
was.
stayed
It
at
was like
the Grafton Hotel was like another block
yeah,
east
you
from
could throw a
there.
rock from the
Yep.
Standard. Yeah,
We used to watch the Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Porsches coming into the Standard,
yeah.
from Mel's Diner or wherever we were, along the strip
Yeah,
there.
yeah, there was a time when that place was like really like cool and hit, and I was just and we got jobs as bussers. I was like 20, 25, 26 at the time, I think. And the best job I could get there was a busser. I was like, yeah, but I'm a bartender. I bartended for a little bit, and they were like, no, you're a
No.
busser. And I was just like, okay.
All right, cool.
So we cleaned up, people's shit, and most of the time we drank. It was just like because we'd work at night, and it was just every night there was a party.
Yeah.
So there would be people in and out of that place, the Ferraris and shit, pulling in with movie stars and rock stars and shit. And I was like, this place is awesome. And we just get shit faced along with them, and
Yeah.
still do our jobs, but probably not as well. But did a lot of partying. But
Uh,
yeah,
Well, to backtrack just a little bit, you talked about that first bike and how you tore it apart. I know for me, I'm a child of divorce, and my dad was a fantastic man, and he knew how to do a ton of stuff. But when my parents divorced, I was 7 years old, and we moved 1,000 miles away from my dad, my
yeah,
mom, and so it just is what it is. I didn't grow up having, and somebody literally showing me mechanically how to do things. The simplest of anything that the kind of typical male, um, you know, whether it's odds in doing odd jobs around the house or yard work or anything mechanical, how to use tools. I
right,
didn't
right,
have that example growing up. So, getting into my adult life, it was super intimidating to me. Like I wanted to do, I guess maybe because there wasn't a lot of that in my growing up years, I extra hard wanted to go into that world. Whatever, my story directly involves seeing a guy, being a guitar tech literally at a show and in one moment of clarity going, I want to do that. Like I
right.
saw that, but not to get into that story right now, but just the idea, I wanted to learn how to do everything.
Yeah,
And I know what you've achieved just and we'll get into talking about your bike now and some of that, but was it the same for you where you had no idea what you're doing and you just dive in and figure it out as you go? Because there's so much merit in that. And I don't know. I feel
yeah.
like generationally, that's something that maybe is going by the wayside.
I mean, yeah, yes and no. It was kind of a slow burn for me. So, my dad has always had a shop, like I guess you could call it a wood shop. And wherever we lived, he always had a workshop, and like his tools and like I said, a type personality. He had it, and he still has it. I went to his house recently. He's 83 years old, still working on shit. But he
Yeah.
has this pegboard that he made, and he has all these tools hanging out, and there's the outline of every tool on there. So you know exactly which tool goes there, and it's borderline insanity. Um, but I never really had the interest to I took some shit apart when I was a kid and put it back together, but not like
Yeah.
I didn't have an affinity for it. And when I got older, when I took that bike apart, I had just like a normal socket set, that I had in my car forever, and that was the extent of my tools. when I moved to LA and got into doing film stuff, I was doing photo shoots and stuff like that. I got into the art department, and all these art department guys had tools,
Yeah.
and they all, you had to bring your own tools to do the job. And so that is really when it started. I was like 27, I think, and I started buying tools. And my first set of tools, I went and bought I saved up all my money, from doing these photo shoots, and I bought, a DeWalt set. And then, you buy a hand, like a ratchet set, and then, you slowly add on.
Yep.
And I got into like, we were building flat walls and stuff like that, and like, doing carpentry stuff. But, the mechanics was that, like building shit and understanding it and enjoying it started to kick in. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I started enjoying going to Home Depot and like, you know, uh, any hardware store. I'd just spend so much time there, just walking around, looking at all the different tools, and just like, because it was a new world for me. Like it was always there, but I had never really grasped or like kind of had any interest in it. It was always just like something that was there. Yeah, people build shit. I don't care. Um, and once I had the interest, I was like, holy shit. I was like, look, you can build whatever you want. Like you can do anything. You can do literally anything you want if you can build it. And
Yep.
so I just wanted to learn everything. And, it started there. And then, I had this motorcycle, this other bike that I had bought in Salt Lake. It was like a Honda Shadow that I brought with me. And, I'd tinker with that and mess around. And a buddy of mine helped me kind of work on that and kind of understand the fundamentals of like working on something where it's like you just have to figure it out. You
Yeah.
know, I have people, not so much anymore, but when I was hanging out a lot more, like, oh man, I want to learn how to work on a bike. Like, can you teach me? And I'm just like, no, like I'm not a mechanic school. Like I didn't go to mechanic school. I don't fucking know. Like you have to want to do it. Like that's what it boils down to. Like if you don't want to do it, it's not going to happen. And you have to just figure it out yourself. It's troubleshooting. It's like, well, my bike's not working. Well, why isn't it working? Well, what's it doing? And you start going down the list. And then these days, it's even easier to work on shit because there's YouTube and there is
Yeah.
a video for everything.
Everything.
And so you can sit there and teach yourself how to work on this shit. Car, same thing. Building anything in your house, building a door frame, hanging
Yep.
a door. Any of the shit that you want to get done around your house, if you feel like doing it, do it. If you don't have the
Yep.
money to pay somebody, do it yourself. There's a bit of
Well,
a learning curve there, and you'll fuck up a lot along the way, which is what I have done and continue to do. But
that's how you learn.
I mean, it's how you learn, and it's extremely gratifying for me. It is. I find I get a lot of gratification out of like that. I did that.
Yeah. Well, I chuckled this morning because I saw a news headline that, of course, on the day that I scheduled to have you on here and do this, Harley Davidson filed for bankruptcy today.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So I just kind of chuckled that the day I'm having Snake on, Harley,
Well,
at the end of Harley Davidson.
I mean, that's a bummer, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think those guys have been struggling for years. A thing to charge, $30,000 for a bike and
Yeah.
not have the clientele that, it's like there's only so many doctors and lawyers out there who can afford it.
So when did your bike's name is Kelly, right?
Hmm.
When did Kelly appear and tell us about it? Her?
Yeah,
Is this a her?
Kelly Kapowski
Okay,
from
Kelly Kapowski.
from
Oh,
Saved by the Bell,
yeah.
the
I didn't
wonderful
know that.
show when I was a kid.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, she was the hottest girl in class, so I wanted I thought my bike was the hottest girl in class. So,
That's awesome.
the way I built my how it came to be, um,
There's
I
a
was living
picture
in,
behind you for those that are watching on video.
yeah,
You can see the beautiful
yeah,
picture on the wall.
that's Kelly. Um, she is a 1955 FLH or Panhead, as they're called. But I was living in LA. Me and these two other guys, Ryan Grossman and Davey Cooper Wasser, um, got a warehouse space in LA, which was unheard of at the time and now. I mean, that's getting a space that I think it was about 4,000 square feet.
Was
Um,
this the Chun?
yeah, Yeah.
So I was texting with Dan Man, our buddy, last night,
Oh yeah.
and offhandedly said, "Is there anything I should ask Snake?" And he said, "Just tell him to talk about the Chun."
The Chun was, oh God, it's the worst name. I don't even. It's like the way it came about is funny, but it's like I hated that name so much because I was like, what does that mean? Like
Yeah.
that's so stupid. Like I don't get it, you know. And it's just like fuck it. Everybody called it the Chun, like it was known as the Chun. I was like, whatever, and I gave up. But it was this warehouse that me and these two guys got, and our friend Sean Dugan had the. It was like a stacked warehouse, you know, the one on top of the other. There was kind of a hill that went around back. So Sean's,
What part of town?
it was on Second Street, just outside of downtown. So like, you know, the very famous Second Street tunnel that's
Yeah.
in every fucking movie. It's
Hmm.
in the Terminator, that tunnel. Um, we were a quarter of a mile from the entrance of that tunnel on the other side, not on the downtown side. So
Gotcha.
once you go through that tunnel, you're in downtown. So we were on the Echo Park side, I guess. But I mean, you walked out our door and it was right there. So we got this space in 2012, I think, the three of us, and it was an empty warehouse space, and we had these, you know, big dreams of, you know, we're gonna have this kick-ass motorcycle shop, and we're gonna build shit, and we're gonna have parties, and we're gonna, you know, rent it out, and it's gonna be like this main hub. I had this dream that it was gonna be like this space that was legendary, and blah blah blah, and so I kind of got off track, but Ryan Grossman, who is still a good friend of mine, and same with Davey, but um, is like a motorcycle kind of he. I guess he's kind of a dealer. You know, he buys, sells, and trades old choppers. You know, and he deals a lot with these what's called survivor bikes, which are these old bikes that were built in the '60s or '70s. You know, choppers, and they've survived through the decades, and they, you know, they probably need a little help, you know, and so he kind of helps them out and sends them along to somebody else, you know. So that he spent his whole life doing that pretty much. So there were bikes, the old choppers, you know, in and out of our warehouse constantly, and I never liked long bikes, which is what that is when you put a
Yes.
big stupid front end, you know, and big dumb sissy bar, you know, it's just a long bike. And I always thought they looked silly, and I was just like, dude, they're dumb fucking looking, you know. It's like they look so stupid, and I never had it like an affinity for them. And I sat on one bike called Devilina, this old HA bike that was built, I don't know, in the '60s or '70s, and Ryan had it, and he sold it, but I sat on it, and it fit me perfect. Just the way I sat on it, the way the bars were, the way the seat was, where my feet went, and it just felt right. And I was like, holy shit. And that was when I decided, I was like, all right, I'm going to build a long bike. And so Ryan had another, you know, grandpa chopper panhead sitting around there that I bought from him. And I don't even think I started it. I just tore it apart and pulled everything off it, tore it down to the frame, and slowly started piecing it together and how I wanted to build it. And it's just kind of, I didn't have any grand idea in my head of how it was going to look. It was just kind of one of those, as it went, it developed and it turned into that. So it took me about a
Yeah.
year to build it.
So since what, 13 or 14, you've had it?
Yeah, I think 13 probably. I built it in 2013. I don't know. There's probably a photo somewhere online of when I finished it, but and then, you know, it took me a couple years of shaking it down to get it solid. Because anytime you change an engineered piece of equipment like that, you know, I don't know if you know this, but I am not an engineer. I didn't go to engineering school. So anytime you cut and bend or change something that's been engineered to work a specific way, it may not work out.
Yeah.
Um, so you do what's called a shakedown and you ride it around for a bit, and some things work and some things don't. Some things break, you know, you have to fix it. You have to figure out, you know, oh, we have to do this a different way or whatever. Some things do work, you get lucky, or you have a pretty good idea of what's going to work and what it doesn't, what isn't going to work. Um, so yeah, you just kind of go with it.
Well, I know that the your bike is very much tied to you image wise. There's so many pictures out there, and I don't know how you became, a whatever a small time Instagram icon during that period, but you amassed a lot of followers, and it's a lot of really cool motorcycle stuff to go back and look at. And for me, I've
Well, thanks.
always totally romanticized the whole, but from Easy Rider back in the day on. And it's just not something that my life, there was never space for it in my life. I rode a lot in my 20s, early 20s, but once I started having kids, it didn't make sense to have a bike, and,
Right,
and where I
right.
was, there wasn't a big, when I look at what it seems like, at least, your Instagram life or the pictures that videos that are out there on YouTube and whatnot, it seems like a pretty incredible community that you guys had, and it, I know because I have other friends that are in motorcycle communities that it's very much a communal thing. Everybody helps everybody. Oh, you need a
Yeah,
part, you break down. I've got this. Bring it over. We'll do
absolutely.
this. And so it's one of those things I never got to. Maybe it's my midlife. I'm past midlife crisis age, but maybe it's
You get a couple years grace in there
I had a
on
couple of
either
years
end.
grace.
So
But maybe that's it, that I extra kind of romanticize that maybe is one of the things that got away that I never got to go do. Because I can tell you this much, I'm not getting on an old hardtail bike now and taking off in the desert with a sleeping bag and,
I mean, why not?
some Vienna sausages in
It's
a bag.
awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the I haven't done it in a while.
What are
Because
some of your coolest experiences doing that? Because I know that there were times that you guys literally took off with no destination and just went.
yeah,
And that is so, the idea of that is so enticing.
yeah,
Um,
that those were some of the more fun trips. Was like, well, let's go in this direction, and it's like, all right, and I mean, there were. I don't know if we ever went anywhere without a basic direction. It wasn't like, well, let's just go fucking wander. I don't think we've done that. It may have seemed like it at the time, but we didn't really have a schedule. It's like, well, we've got like 2 weeks. Or it's like I have a month off. It's like, fuck it, let's go for a ride. And I mean, a number of them. We rode to Portland from LA. That was a super fun trip. I think we took our time. I think we took like 2 weeks just dicking around and sleeping in the dirt. Um, Partied in Portland for a few days, and then came back down, and I mean, I've done that trip a couple times. I rode to Texas once. Um, yeah, yeah, I said once. I will never do that ride ever again. That fucking state is so big and flat and windy. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, it was still a fun trip. I had a blast. Went to a chopper show out there. I don't think it's around anymore, but it's called Giddy Up. This was back in like 15. Um, ridden to Mexico a number of times. That's a trip riding down there. Different world, you know,
yeah.
but still awesome. I remember I broke something. It was my oil bag, my older bike. I had this other bike. My first Harley was a sporty, and I chopped it up and whatever. We went on a El Diablo run, which is a ride that happens every 2 years. I think they still do it. And my oil bag mount broke and snapped off, and one of the dudes who's on the ride was just like, "Hey, I saw a mechanic shop up the street. Maybe they can help you out." I'm like, "All right." I rode up there, and they didn't speak any English, and I don't speak Spanish, and we muddled through. It's like this no good, and they're just pointed at it. They looked at it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," And I pulled off and brought it over to them, and the dirt floor shop. I mean, I think most of it was open air. They just had like this canopy, uh, you know, uh, corrugated steel canopy, and they had a welder in there and some other equipment and stuff. But They welded a bolt snapped off inside, so it sheared a bolt off, and I couldn't get it out
Yeah.
to put the other one in. And I was like, fuck. And so everybody's like, oh, just use an easy out, which those things that I've never, ever,
I
ever,
think like twice ever one's worked for me.
never,
Yeah.
I've never gotten an easy out to work ever. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. It's a pretty good possibility. But these dudes, I just brought it over to me, like, oh yeah. And this dude on the ground just pulls out his MIG welder and just holds the, thing, the goggles up to his face and just tack welds a little tower,
A bead on it. Yeah.
a tiny like, like, and then builds it up, and then grabs it with some fucking
Spins it
vice
right out.
grips and spins it right out. And I was just like, holy shit. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he goes, there you go. And he like made some funny sound. And I was just like, what do you want? And he's like, $20. I was like, there you go, dude. And then there's a hardware store in town and went and got the bolt I needed. And that was that. But so people are like, no matter where you go, like to touch back on what you said about the community and like helping each other out, stuff like that. You don't even have to be in the motorcycle community.
That's my point. Yeah.
But people, when you are on a bike, there's something that when you're on the road, people can see that and they can sense it and they can kind of feel for you. And they like that romanticized kind of fuck, and I think part of it is I want to be doing that. Like, let me
Yeah.
help you get out there and keep doing that.
I think that there's the element of, when you're in a car, even if you're, whatever, going from the tip of Argentina to northern Canada on some road trip in a
Yeah.
4x4, whatever it is, you're there. It's a bit impersonal. When you're on a bike, you're exposed and you are literally vulnerable.
You're fully
And
immersed in it. Yeah. I mean, you
exactly.
feel everything, you smell everything. That's in Mexico, you smell a lot.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy. You feel all the minor temperature changes. You go, through a dip in a valley, you can feel it get cold. You come up and it gets warmer. It's like you go by a golf course or a river, it's chillier, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, you feel everything. It's a way different experience. You also see everything. Your view, in a car, you have a roof and you got shit here and here. You got stuff in the way. On a motorcycle, I wear a 3/4 helmet and sunglasses. This is what I see.
Panoramic.
Yeah, I see everything. I see everything. You feel everything. It's amazing. And then we used to like to, like I said, I haven't done it in a long time, but we used to just sleep in the dirt. Um,
That's what I wanted to ask about that. I mean, my parallel to this, I guess, and I think this may sound crazy to some people, but I think there is something beneficial, especially earlier in your life. I'm not saying I'm going to go do this now. I'm way too bougie now to go do this, but yeah, I know you are too. But there were times like I remember some tours I did early on, like I'm talking van tours, and then even a pretty big tour. I did the first Down record, which you may not be familiar with, but it was Phil from Pantera and couple, and Pepper from COC. It's this kind of super group that happened.
cool.
I mean, they're still a band, but the first record they did was in '95, and we're on a bus. I did the very first Down tour, and we started in New Orleans and went up through the Midwest to, I think, Boston, and then flew and did San Francisco. We did the Fillmore in San Francisco, and the Palace used to be a venue across from the Capitol Records building at Hollywood and Vine.
Okay, yeah.
It's something else now. It's a dance club or something. But anyway, on that tour, it was like the first 14 days up to Boston. I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, and I don't even remember why this was the case, but Philip and I both realized after 10 days that the singer of the band, neither one of us had taken a shower. Because me, I don't know why he hadn't. He had all the time in the world. I was working all day, every day, and
Yeah.
just the venues, the way it worked out, that showers, I was either like went in and looked at it at the end of the night after 12 other dudes had used it. And it was in
Yeah.
some crappy
Ooh.
dressing room. I was like, nope. But I think I made it. He outlasted me by 2 days because I was like, I'm not getting on a plane from Boston to San Francisco smelling like this. So I
Yeah,
finally took a shower.
these poor people.
But that dirt bag element of it, finding your limits and
Hmm.
finding the limits of what you can be comfortable with. And I think there's something about it that makes you so much more grateful, and just to have a different perspective when you're back in your everyday life and you have these comforts
Absolutely.
around you, you're more grateful for them. And
Absolutely.
not that, you were forced to go out and sleep on the dirt by your bike. It was by choice, but
No, but I mean, it's like we talk about it, or we have talked about it. Me and my buddy Todd, who we rode around with. He was my riding buddy for a long time. We talk about it, and it's just like people want to do it, and it's like, oh, and it's just like, well, I mean, I suggest everybody do it. I do,
yeah,
but it is not easy. It is not an easy thing to do, to ride around on an old chopper. It's like a rigid old motorcycle. I mean, my engine was built in 1955, so that technology, all that technology is still on my bike. It's not,
yeah,
I don't have a disc brake. I have one brake. I have one rear mechanical drum. I hit my brake and it goes to a linkage, and a piece of steel pulls on and that's how I slow
yeah,
down. And it doesn't really work that well. So it's just like, and they're constantly breaking down. You got to work on them. They're not terribly comfortable to sit on for 10 to 12 hours a day. My bike is rather comfortable, but it's not an easy thing to do. And then it's like, well, let's sleep in the dirt, and we'll find somewhere. We didn't we tried to we I think we only stayed at campsites a handful of times. We would just try to find like a fire road, or something off the side of another side road where
yeah,
nobody was going to drive by, and be like, fuck it, we'll push our bikes behind a bush or down in a ditch or something under a bridge, shit like that. And we would just do that mostly because it was free.
yeah,
But it's, you wake up with the sun, and I don't think I brought a sleeping, or I didn't bring a tent with me for the longest time. Up until recently, we did a trip last year. Oh, you know what? I brought a hammock, but it's it, it's for a lot of those years I just used the sleeping bag and like my blanket that I brought as a pillow, or an oil can, or whatever the fuck you have. It's like
yeah,
you're just gonna sleep for a few hours. You wake up with the sun, you pack your shit up. The less you pull out to use, the
yeah,
less you got to put away. So,
yeah,
and that was another thing. Every trip I took, I always realized I brought too much. And it
yeah,
was like, and I didn't bring very much. And so I would do every trip, I would try to bring less. I don't need that. I only need one pair of socks. I only need one change of underwear, because you can wash them in a sink if you need to, or a river. We just jump in the river and be like, that's good enough. And if it was hot, you'd want to do that anyway. Uh,
yep,
but yeah, I see. I mean, I don't want to the fact that I've done that, and I did it for years. Like doing it now, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. It sounds awesome with a hotel, a bed, and a shower.
yeah.
But um, God, I do miss the feeling that I got from doing it, like how new it was and how much fun it was and the excitement and even the times that probably the trips I remember the most are the ones that sucked the most.
Always.
The ones that were the hardest to get through. So many breakdowns, or this happened, or so and so got in an accident, or fuck, we were stuck in this town for 5 days, trying to order parts or whatever it was. It was like those are the ones you remember. The easy ones you forget.
Yeah.
It's like the hard ones, the ones that really put you through it. Those are the ones you remember, and like you said, like it gives you a greater appreciation for the shit you have.
And also the benefit of those that you go through that with,
Yeah,
that never goes away. And
yeah,
though for me, the connections that I have, the deepest connections I have are the ones with, with guys that I went through, that I happened to be on a tour with and we went through some great adversity on the job, or whether, one of us lost a family member, whatever it was, you go through those difficult times together. And,
right.
those are bonds those are the ones that that I've talked about on this podcast already, where you can go years and not talk to that person.
Yeah,
And when you pick up the phone and call them or answer the phone or see them in person, it's as if you didn't miss a day.
right.
That kind of connection that comes from that adversity. And one other thing I wanted to touch on that you said, I've got there was a guy I did just like 2 tours with. He was the guest singer in a band I was working for. His name's Whit Crane. He's the singer from the band Ugly Kid Joe. And he's
I remember that band.
yeah, he's a fantastic human being. He's
Yeah,
a Southern California guy.
cool.
And I met him. He came in to sing for a band from New York, from Brooklyn, that I was working for on a European tour. And he showed up for like a 3-month European tour it was even going into the winter, and he had a backpack.
Yeah,
And I was blown away by that. And we finished the tour. I'm leaving out a bunch, but we finished the tour. And the tour manager kept asking, Whit, where do you want to go? I need to get your flights. At the end, we finished wherever in Amsterdam. Are you flying back to LA? And finally, like 2 days before the tour was over, he was like, I want to go to Africa. And then he just picked a country. And I'm like, where are you going? I don't know.
that's awesome.
And to this day, because I ran into, when I was in LA last week, I went and met up with a mutual friend. And he said to this day, if he can't carry it in his backpack, he doesn't have it.
Yeah,
And when you are able, it's been a long time since I was pared down that much,
right.
and there is such freedom when everything you have, that I'm good with
Yeah,
what's on my back right
yeah.
now.
It's
There's a,
it's amazing how little actually need.
yeah, it
Because
really
it's like,
is.
I mean, I love that, and I used to do that, and I mean, things do change. I mean,
Yeah.
I just went to Park City, excuse me, for a wedding. My cousin was getting married, and
How many bags?
well, there's a number of different events. It's like there's the
You were
pre
there for what, 2 days? How many
three
bags did
three
you take?
days.
3 days?
Yeah, but I have those that big Pelican, like the big one. Like I brought that giant thing. I had like 2 suits, 2 pairs of boots, like
Yeah.
8 different shirt changes. I'm there for 2 fucking days. Like I don't need all this shit. But I was like, hey, you know what? Fuck it. I'm at the point where I'm like the comfy.
Yeah.
I'm
With
wearing my
age.
Crocs through the fucking airport. It's like
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You know.
Before we get off and kind of move, I want to start talking about work, but um, I just wanted to ask all your years of riding, even up till today. And I ask this because not on a motorcycle, but on a bicycle, I almost got killed in 2012. I got hit by a car. Me and one of my best friends were out. I used to ride road bikes,
Hmm.
like Tour de France bikes.
Sure.
And we got rear-ended by a guy. We were going about 20 miles an hour, just cruising along on a beautiful, peaceful day out in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And a guy rear-ended us going 65 miles an hour.
Oof.
And it almost killed my buddy. He had like 25 or 27 broken bones. It broke his
Jesus.
neck. And he had a major TBI. He has recovered from that now, from all of it, with a little bit of, lasting damage. And
TBI.
I broke a traumatic brain injury.
Ah.
And it broke the left side of my pelvis and bunch of hamburger meat, the whole left side of my body. And I had a
Ugh.
major concussion. I lost about 8 days after the accident that I don't remember. But all that being said, I know how much that it took me a long time to kind of get back to normal. And there were huge benefits from it too, because I tell you what, I remember the accident. I remember everything, getting to the hospital. It's in that night after the accident that I kind of lost memory for about a week. But I remember the absolute clarity in my head, which this is the gift of that, of how quiet it was laying in that ditch. I was terrified. I thought my best friend was dead,
Hmm.
laying about 40 feet from me. The guy in the car didn't get out. He stopped way up the road, and it was dead silent. And I was looking up through the leaves of this tree. I was terrified to look down at my body because I didn't want to see how bad
Right.
it was. And the peace I had in that moment was that all the stuff I had just finished a movie the day before, and it was kind of a chaotic show, and I just finished that, was about to start another one. There was stuff with my family going, there was all the noise of
Yeah.
day-to-day life. But in that moment, I was crystal clear on what mattered. And
Really.
all I wanted to do was I wanted to talk to my 2 daughters.
Yeah.
I wanted to let my mom know I was okay. You know, I wanted to talk to family.
Right.
But that being said, uh, have you, being on a motorcycle as many miles as you have, what's the closest call you've had, or any dangerous moments like that?
I mean, I've had a number of close calls. I've wrecked a number of times. Some were scary, some were funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things that, I mean, you're on a piece of steel with an engine between your legs, hovering inches above the ground, going, at sometimes 80 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and but yeah, I've had a few. I mean, nothing too crazy. I high sided once. That was probably my scariest wreck. Was when I was a very new rider. I was 23 years old. It was on that shadow that I had. And we were in Utah and we were riding around, bar hopping, not drinking a ton, but have like a beer
Yeah.
at, and we'd stop and hang out for a bit, have a beer, bullshit, go out to talk about motorcycles. All right, let's go somewhere else. Then we'd ride somewhere else, have a beer, bullshit. Um, and then we were riding on this, kind of at the base of one of the mountains, this road that kind of went along it. You could go like 60 miles an hour, 65. And a buddy of mine who had just finished building his bike slows down and takes a ride on this road. And I was like, oh shit. And new rider, inexperienced. I grabbed a whole bunch of rear brake and it just went, oh shit, I'm not supposed to go there. And just it caught and just tossed me. And this is in Utah. I wasn't wearing a helmet. I didn't have gloves on. I was wearing skate shoes. I did have a leather jacket on because it was a little chilly. So my skin was saved. But I mean, I remember like that moment you talk about, that moment. This was in the air, but I was in the air kind of upside down like that and just staring at the ground going, oh man, this is going to hurt so bad. And it felt like it took forever.
Yeah.
Like when time slows down, like I guess it's because your brain starts processing things really quickly. But I was like, oh fuck. And then like all of my skating and snowboarding instincts kicked in and I was like, you're just gonna eat shit. You're eating shit. Fine. You know how to do this. And tuck and roll. And that's pretty much what I did. But I landed on my hands first and that took all the skin,
Well,
not all, but a lot of the skin off my palms, which sucked, by the way. Um,
yes.
and just tumbled and slid for, I don't know, a bit. But I remember sliding and having my arms over my head. So I wasn't wearing a helmet. I could hear my bike behind me. And I thought that it was going to hit me. And that was the only thing I was scared about. And then it stopped and I just kind of looked up and I was just like all shaky, like, oh God, and bike was
Yeah.
way back there. I was just like, oh God. But that was probably the worst wreck I've ever had. I've had a number of other wrecks that were nowhere near as bad, and I didn't break anything. It was fine. I've
Yep.
had a handful of friends who fared a lot worse, but
Yeah. I look at it very similar. I mean, the overall experience of it, of course, it's a little bit deeper than this, but I look at it a lot like the kind of dirt bagging for a few weeks. That experience, it just is another thing that adds to your, overall maturity or growing up. When you go through an experience where you realize just how quickly it can
yeah,
all end,
yeah,
just be done, it gives you a different appreciation for everything else. And
absolutely. And then, I mean, also having friends
yeah,
to knock off, I've had a number of friends who've died on motorcycles and, it puts things in perspective. I will say that I have friends who have died, and I have other friends who ride who say that it scared the shit out of them and they had a hard time getting back on their bike.
yeah,
I had the opposite experience. When I had good friends die on motorcycles, it made me want to ride more. Just because that is how we knew each other.
yeah,
That's how I thought of them. I thought that, it's like when I'm riding, it kind of brings me closer to them type of shit. So, not to get like spiritual or anything, but it's like, this is what we
yeah.
did together. This is the bond we had. Like, I want to
It's
do that.
connection.
It's a connection. So, yeah, it's,
Yeah,
that's what made me want to do it more. But yeah, it's a dangerous thing. I mean, same with riding bicycles. God, I see those guys on the side of the road on these mountain
Yep.
roads or desert roads or wherever you are, and there's no shoulder, so they have to
Yep.
be like on that white line, you know?
You're trusting humanity, which
Dude,
is a scary proposition this day and
terrifying.
age.
Because I can't tell you how many it makes me nervous when I pull over, because my wife rides too. When I
Yeah.
pull over on the side and it's a little loose, and Emily stops like closer to the road, and I'm like,
Yeah.
farther over, get. I was like, all it takes is one asshole who's looking at his phone to, hit that rumble strip and then smack
You're
into you.
done.
And it's the same on a bicycle or a jogger. It's like it's it's
It's
it's not the safest thing in the world, but you don't do it because it's safe. You do it because you love it.
Well, I want to get into talking about work because there's some stuff I want to cover there.
Fuck
And
that.
supposedly that's why, the audience for this, at least I've built it that way. I'm going to tell one quick story because I still laugh about this, and I'm not going to say his name because he's passed away now. But there was during the writer's strike in 2008, I had only been in the business about 2 years. I was pushing B Dolly on a movie here in Shreveport, Louisiana, and it was like a 60 or 70 million dollar feature about I'll just say about a video game, a fighting game, and the A Dolly grip was actually a key back in L.A.
Hmm.
But it was the writer's strike and nobody had work. So we had like this incredible crew to start this film out here because everybody was available.
Right, right.
And he came out and was pushing A, I was pushing B. And, for those of you not in film that, the dolly grips are to work together all day long. You're each married to one of the cameras. And
And they're the biggest bitches in the grip crew.
we're going to leave. We'll just glance. We will, yeah, we'll glance right over that. But they too do tend to be a little bit more high maintenance than the rest of the grips. So anyway, I was pushing B, he was pushing A, and we were just talking one day. I don't know what was going on or why we had free time because you usually don't on
No.
set, and maybe it was at lunch or something. And I was like, "How long have you been gripping?" And he starts telling me, "Well, I went to college. He had gone to USC, I think, and then he was from LA."
Mm.
And he said, and then I failed out in one semester. I was just partying. And then I went to whatever community college for the next semester and I failed out and I wasn't even going. And he goes, the beginning of that summer, his dad, I guess, was in the art department in LA or did something. He'd been in the business for years. And I think even his mom may have been in the business in accounting. I don't remember. But he said his dad woke him up at like 6 o'clock one morning. He's like, get up, get dressed. He's like, what? What are we doing? He just shut up, get dressed, get in the car. And he gets in the car and they drive across town, whatever, and they pull up to the local 80 hall. And he said, I can see you're not going to make anything out of your life, so we're going to sign you up to be a grip. I have no idea if the story was true, but man, it was a good
Yep,
story.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
perfect.
yeah,
The perfect place
this
to take you, local lady. Here, go sign up.
Yeah, go sign up. This was also the guy that when it got towards the end of every day, he would look at us and say, I'm going to go back to the room tonight and put a bottle of tequila to my head and pull the trigger.
You told me that story before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
But anyhow, what was your on ramp? I know
Oh,
you said you did photo shoots and stuff in LA.
yeah,
Who sucked you in?
so my yeah, um, my good friend Woolsey, Nick Woolsey, was a friend of mine when I first moved to LA, and he worked at the Standard. He actually got me a job at the Standard as a busser. He was a busser. Funny side story: my first day at the Standard was his last day because he got shit faced and was sick of that place and pretty much told everybody to fuck off. And I was just like, he was referring me. He was like, here's my buddy Snake. He's going to come work for this. Fuck you guys. I hate you all. And like left, hammered, middle finger in the air. And I was just like, ugh. But he went and worked. He got a job as a PA and worked on a couple different things. And then when I got to the point where I didn't want to work at the Standard anymore and I was about ready to put a gun in my mouth because it sucked so bad, I hit him up. And I was like, dude, can you get me a job doing whatever the fuck it is you're doing? I don't care what it is. I'll do it. And at the time, he was a casting PA on a TV show called Deal or No Deal. It was a game show with Howie Mandel, and anyway. I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. So I started doing that. I quit the standard, and I was 27 at the time. Started PAing in the casting department. You know, we'd go pick up the contestants and like their family and shit from the airport and bring them to the studio or the hotel or whatever, and like we'd hang out with them before they went on and bring them from like the green room to like backstage and like so we just kick it with them. It was pretty chill job. It was pretty awesome. Now that I look back on it, it was a pretty great introduction. Like we didn't have to go on coffee runs and pick up garbage and shit like that. We weren't production PAs. So we got to, you know, we had like the cush job. But after that I you know did some PA shit on other shows here and there. And then I got into seeing the art department guys. And I was like, that looks cool, you know, like building shit. And I was like, that seems like more of my vibe, you know. And so I, you know, start talking with them, hanging out with them on set, started doing photo shoots, started doing more of that, got into the photo world for a while and like fashion. So it was like a lot of fashion shoots like Vogue and shit like that. We'd build the sets and, you know, do set dressing. When you do photo shoots, it's non-union and you wear a lot more hats. It's not
Yeah.
as it's not as departmentalized, you know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, we're building the sets, we're building the walls, we're dressing the set, you know, we go and pick up all the shit and then we return it all and tear it all down. But I did that for a few years, you know, and that was fun. It was cool. But the more I was around like fashion people, oh man, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was just like, get me away from these people. It was the conversations that they would have behind camera and like the client, the agency, like those people, like the
It's pretty gross.
dude, they're fashion people. They have no fucking, they can't grasp what is happening in real life and like their world. Granted, they're living in Beverly Hills or wherever they are, you know, and it's just like a lot of these people and they want to live in that la la land kind of detached from everybody else. And it was just, it got to the point where I was just like, fuck all of these people. And so I started bugging my friend, Bill Buckingham, who I had met through Sean Dugan. They were best friends. And he was a key grip. He owned Hillbilly Grip Company, as you know. Thank you very much for that jacket, by the way.
I'll tell that story in a minute, but
But
keep going.
so I bugged him for months. It's like, Bill, I can't do this art department shit anymore, you know. And we didn't know each other super well, but I knew he was a grip. And was that super loud? Sorry. Um,
It's okay.
I knew he
Did
was
I
a grip.
jump or something?
What's that?
Did I flinch?
Yeah, your eyes got a little wider. Like, oh, sorry, I'll turn my head next time. Um, I knew he owned a grip company and did, you know, he did mostly commercials, but you know, I just kept every time I saw him, I was like, "Hey, Bill, ready to grip?" You know, just like nonstop, nonstop. You know, and eventually he's like, "Fucking come on, fine."
He was a motorcycle guy.
Yeah, so we kind of bonded over that stuff too. This is well before the Panhead, but you know, I still rode, and you know, and so did Sean, and we all kind of, you know, had that in common. And
Yeah.
you know, every time I just saw Bill, I just bug him. You know, hey man, ready to grip? Hey, you know that kid who just, hey man, you know, tugging on his shirt. Hey man, you know, if you need
Yeah.
anybody, I'm your guy. You know, and
It
eventually
works.
he was like, fine, come on. You know, and he was doing this movie, which was out of his not his wheelhouse, but he just didn't do movies. He did commercials. But he was doing this movie, and he was just like, and that's one way you can get in the union is, as you know, you can, you know, if somebody gets you in before something flips from non-union to union, and you're on the roster, you're in there. So
So
I
that's
got
how
like,
you got
that's how
your
I got
card.
27 of my days, and Bill got me in. I didn't know shit, and I was just, you know, running around. You know, any call that came over the radio, you, you know, you frantically stand up and do this, and you grab stuff, and people are like, "What are you doing, man? Sit the fuck down!" Like,
Spin in a circle.
yeah, you have no idea what's going on, but you want to do a good job and you want to hustle, but you don't know when anything's called, and you don't know how to bring it to set, and you don't know, you
Yeah.
know. What's a tweenie? I don't know what's an 18K?
Yeah.
I don't.
Uh,
And
yeah. It literally is like when I started, and I talked about this on the last episode with my buddy Bob, but I, this is the way it is more in tax incentive states that all of a sudden get an influx of work and you don't have the labor force for it. And of course, productions don't want to bring in experienced LA guys. It costs so much more to house
yeah,
them and travel them, and they make more money than we do and all the above. So when you have green guys and you throw them in, the first 3 months on the job was literally learning an entire different language.
yeah,
And then you go do another job for another key and you
and it's different shit.
realize that that key uses even different language for everything.
Yeah,
And that happens pretty much across the board in every department on every show. It's a very overwhelming thing world to step into at
yeah,
the beginning.
absolutely, and especially when everybody else seems like they're calm, cool, collected. They know what they're doing. They're like, dude, relax, and you feel like that. That kid the first day of school trying not to look like a nerd, but you're so nervous, and you're like, oh, fucking, and
The worst.
and you keep dropping shit, and you're shaky, and you're just like, God, you keep saying the wrong shit, but I mean, yeah, especially gripping. I mean, we have so much equipment. There's
Oh my
so
God.
much gear, and it rarely changes, over the years. It evolves a little bit, but it's the same shit we've been using for so long. But
Yeah.
one thing could have 8 different names
Or
depending
more.
on where you are in the country or in the world. And
Yeah.
it's just like I've gone places and they're like, "Give me an Anki bonk." I'm like, "What the fuck
What?
did you just say?" They're like, "An
Yeah.
Anki bonk," And I'm just like, I don't know
Yeah.
what the hell you're talking about, And they're like, "Lips,"
There's a key.
And I'm just like, "A platypus?" And they're like, "Yeah." And
Yeah.
like I know
A
people
duck,
listening are like,
a duckbill.
"Yeah,
Uh,
duckbill." Like
and then you have the straight lace guys like it's a beadboard holder.
yeah,
You know.
beadboard holder, lips. I mean, there's so many different, and there's the names of things you're not supposed to use anymore.
Oh yeah. No,
Like
yeah. We don't.
we,
There's lots of
lots of
those.
those, but I still say butt plug.
Yeah. Because guess what? It looks like a
It
butt
looks
plug.
like a butt
Anyway,
plug.
we're getting really in the weeds. There's a key. There's a key from New Orleans named Jimmy Ryan who I will have on here one day, and he's just hilarious. He was a big time dolly grip for many years, and finally took the leap and is keying now, and has been for 10, 12 years now. But he calls everything a gazinta, a son of a bitch, a goddamn it, or he
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
he never uses terminology, and he will stand in the middle of the set. He goes, "We're going to be right here, and we're going to put a goddamn it over here, and a motherfucker, and a gazenta, and a whoop,
Yeah, see,
and
I can
all his
appreciate that
guys,
though. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
all his guys know him so well.
yeah.
And if you've worked with him, all you got to do is be watching him, and you want,
You
we're
have
going to put a big diffusion frame in front of it. We're
you have
going
to
to
be
put a
paying
right
attention.
sider.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be
But
sitting on an Apple box behind a cart on your phone.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
not going to work.
yeah,
You have to be engaged. But before we get too far ahead, I did want to touch on the hillbilly grip thing. I, whatever who is it? Kevin Bacon's 6 degrees of separation
yeah, yeah.
thing that, that rule he always talked about
Uh huh.
or that he brought up. It is, I have never found it to be more than 2 or 3 degrees in the film business. And it's the same in rock and roll. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's the same in cycling, motorcycle world. But when I met you on 1883 several years ago, I really quickly I saw you have a tattoo on your arm, a hillbilly
Mhm.
tattoo. And I saw it. I'm like, what's up with that? Because I have a hillbilly tattoo on the back of my leg because I am by blood a
You
hillbilly.
are actually a bona fide hillbilly.
I'm a bona fide
Yeah, yeah,
hillbilly from West Virginia. And when I saw it, I asked you, and you were like, "Oh, it was for my buddy. He got killed." And immediately I knew it was Bill, and
yeah.
I had never met Bill, but I worked on a series here in Louisiana early on when I was pushing dolly and just working as a set grip. The first season, have to be studious about this. The first season that it came here, it shot a lot of it in LA and they shot elements of it here. Season one, they came here to do, I don't know, 3 weeks or so. And the key that came was, he was, he was not awesome. He did not want to use any local crew, which is
Right.
often the case.
Yeah.
And for those of you not in the film business, I'm trying to explain things better because I've listened to the old episodes and go, people have no idea what we're talking about. But if you're from Hollywood, every department is essentially has its own union. And when you get outside of LA, and it's kind of similar to LA and New York, a little different, but the entire rest of the country in these tax incentive states, so to speak, we have combined locals. So in our union here in Louisiana, it's, set deck, electric, grip, hair and makeup, wardrobe, even craft service. We're all in the same
It's
union,
not as
except,
specific. Yeah.
yeah. And it's except for camera. And there is the, local 80 guys, which is the grip union in LA. Those are that's the major leagues, so to speak. Now that's like the big guys, these are the guys who invented the trade,
Right.
and there's respect for that. And outside of LA, at least coming out, it doesn't bother me near as much anymore, but it used to, you have an LA key coming in, you're like, oh God, this is he's gonna hate us. He's gonna think we're a bunch of hayseeds and
I have something to
rednecks or
say
whatever.
about that as well, though.
Well,
Keep going.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so we're doing this series. I was working as a set grip, and the key I had been working for knew the key that was coming in to do it, because the key that was coming in from LA, who was a local lady guy, had been from this area and had started in the business here. And so he was coming here to do this series. He called the key I worked for and said, can I rent your truck? Yes. And he got the key I had been working for to rig for those 3 weeks. He was the rigging key.
Nice.
And he offered up a few of us, his main set grips, to work for this LA guy. And the LA guy comes in and he hated us. He didn't want us to be there. He wanted his entire own crew, which I totally understand.
Yeah, I get it.
But I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But he treated us not awesome.
That's
like, I won't go into it. It was not cool.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Like I'll just say that the last day that we were there, we had done 6 in a row. We came in at 2:00 on a Friday afternoon to shoot out at a plantation home, and we were spread out everywhere. Like we had 3 or 4 condors out in pastures. We had an entire mansion rigged, both front and backyard house, and we wrapped at 9:00 Saturday morning. And the key came on the mic and said, all LA guys in the van, we're going to the hotel, and left me, one other set grip, and 2 riggers that came in on an off day to clean up the entire place. So
That's
it comes
a
back.
Dick move.
Yeah.
Huge.
It came back for season 2 and different key. And I can't imagine why they had chosen a different key.
Weird. Yeah.
Weird. But when they came back, it was Miguel Bienvenidos was the key.
Benvenides. Yeah, Miguel.
I don't know how to say his name. Sorry.
Benvenides. I don't even know how to say it either, but Miguel.
Bienvenidos. Apologies.
Sorry, Miguel.
Yeah, sorry, Miguel.
Benvenides?
Yeah, Bienvenidos, I think. But he comes in, and first morning, 6 a.m., sun's not up, we're standing around tailgate, meeting the best boy, and it's almost all he brought was dolly grips and best boy.
Yeah.
And we're all standing around tailgate, tool belts on, 15 minutes before call.
Yeah.
Already got breakfast in our bellies.
Ready to go.
And the best boy walks out and goes, hey, guys, you can take those tool belts off.
Were you guys carrying like hammers and everything? And
the full rig.
The full, okay.
Everything. Yeah. And he's like, you're never going to be so far away from the set carts that you can't grab whatever you need.
Right.
Just relax. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
And Miguel walks out on the tailgate and goes, which one of you is Brent? And I kind of raised my hand. He goes, surprise, you're B dolly grip now. And I was like, oh, sweet.
You're like,
I don't have any of my dolly stuff with me. He's like, go to your house and get it. We got time. He's like, you're gonna be, and he brought a B dolly grip who stayed in the strip club all night here in town and missed call. So I got battlefield promoted to B dolly. And we went through the couple weeks, and in that couple weeks, we had a couple of night shoots, and it was chilly, and he pulls out this gas station jacket that says Hillbilly Grip Corporation on the back. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. Where'd you get that? And he starts telling me about Bill. This is the guy I came up under.
Right.
And the very last night, he kind of made a little bit of a deal out of it. It was really cool. He was like, Brent, where you at? Come around the side of the house. We were shooting at the same mansion as before, the plantation home. And he hands me the jacket. And he said, thanks for doing a great job.
Oh, yeah.
A real hillbilly should have a hillbilly jacket.
That's great.
And So I had that jacket for like 12 years. And then I meet you on 1883, find out you came up under him. And I'm like, that's why I had this jacket, because Bill passed away
Yeah.
in between that time. And I gave it to you. And it was one of those connection things of, oh, that's why I had this jacket.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, that was that story. But what were you going to say?
Well, I appreciate the jacket, because mine was stolen, or somebody else took it because they thought it was theirs or whatever. I no longer have mine that Bill gave me, so I appreciate the
Of
jacket.
course.
Um, what I was going to touch on was the out of town guys,
Oh,
um,
gotcha.
and probably because I have worked out of town and with you guys so much, I have a greater appreciation, than maybe a guy who has never worked outside of LA for the local dudes, and it's like I think my first out of town experience was on Yellowstone season one, um, rigging with Dan Man, and
Yeah.
just pretty much me and him and our best boy, Turkey. But I just had a different idea. I was younger, I think I was 35, coming in, this is damn near 10 years ago, I was coming in thinking I'm hot shit from LA, and like kind of arrogant, just kind of a shitty, not like not an asshole, but, maybe a little bit of an asshole. And, but, working on that, realized it was actually probably the next time I worked because it was with you and, Brad Baxter and Davey and all those guys
And
and
Andy,
Bob Clark. And,
Bob Clark.
yeah, it was Andy Clark. Name isn't Bob, but Dan loves to call him Bob. Um, Working with you guys and all the other people who work on every other movie and every other TV show that doesn't shoot in LA. There are so many people in this country, not in LA and not in New York, who do a really good job and better than guys in LA or in New York. For whatever reason, they know the area, they've come up under different guys, it's like, and I tell people when they want to, I want to be a good grip. I'm like, all right, well, work with as many people as you can. Don't ever say I know. Soak up as much information as you can. Even if you know something, somebody's trying to show you something else. You want to learn,
Yeah.
do you want to learn something new? Yes. I already know that, but, don't say that. Just take it all in. It'll make you a
Yeah.
more well-rounded grip. And that goes for any department. I mean,
Anything in life,
anything in
really.
life. Just take in as
Yeah.
much information as you can from as many people as you can. It'll make you a more well-rounded whatever it is you're doing. But I just wanted to touch on the out of town guys because I know these LA guys, come in and I want my guys and this and that. And yeah, that's the case because you want your own crew. You want the guys you've been working with for a long time. But man, I've worked with some outstanding grips from not from LA or New York. So
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
you guys
I
are
did
some
want.
of my favorite guys to work with. The Louisiana boys. I love you guys.
I'm telling you, man, the crew. It just so happened that when the show Yellowstone started, it was, I think, about 6 or 8 months after. Well, it was actually season two of Yellowstone. Yellowstone had already done a season, but I quit rig keying. I rig keyed for about 6 or 7 years
Yeah.
here in North Louisiana, and my crew, the core crew during that time, Andy Clark, Bob Clark, as Dan Man calls
Yeah.
him, was my best boy, and Big Brad Baxter was our
Hmm.
main number one spot, and Dave Easley worked with us all the time, Super Dave, and there were a couple of other guys, but Dan had done a series here that I rig keyed. He had keyed second unit on it and met all of us. And he first sucked Brad out there to be his best boy. And
Yeah.
then Andy went out and then Dave Easley, and then I followed. So, this was the crew that I ran with for years here is the crew you're talking about.
Yeah.
Awesome humans that are all some of my best friends.
Great dude.
But, I just wanted to talk about you coming to Texas to work. Because when I met you on 1883, if nobody's familiar, it's a period Western, and we shot it from August through the end of January in kind of not West Texas, but west of Fort Worth. And it gets hot in Texas. It doesn't get hot. The humidity factor is a little less terrible than it is here in Louisiana. But I remember the first day that we met, we had been on the show like 3 weeks, but you were at the stage facility in Fort Worth, and I was at a convention center. We'd had a different rig there, a big green screen rig in downtown Dallas. So I didn't meet you till like 3 weeks into the show. That first morning, we had to get up and drive like an hour and a half to work out at Palo Pinto. We're out in this totally remote piece of property on the Brazos River, and there's a whole story about the abandoned cocaine party house that we were had our little rigging staging
Oh
at.
yeah,
And
that place is great.
yeah, and so we've already been up for, since 3:30 to get to work for a 5:30 call, an hour and a half away. And we met each other that morning, and I of course knew about you. And a little bit later in the day, I'm like, wow, this guy's got waxed britches on. Like he's got some really high dollar, nice like canvas pants, and they're waxed,
So
like a
fucking hot.
waxed jacket. And I'm like, this was August
Ugh.
in Texas. I'm like, oh, he's gonna regret that. And I swear to you, it wasn't 3 hours later. It was the equivalent of, you ain't from around here, are you? And and I walked by the truck, and you were standing at the top of the steps, and you were like, it's just so hot. You were like, my pants are melting.
Dude, it was so damn hot. I don't know how you guys deal with that humidity. Like the heat is one thing. Like I live in the
Oh,
Mojave Desert. It gets hot out here. But the
different.
fucking humidity. Oh my God. It is
You
just
didn't wear wax britches much after that
no, I did not.
until the seasons changed.
God, that was brutal. Yeah, I remember that. I was wearing oh God, that sucked. That was bad.
Well, in general, just the insanity of the work we do, and um the on a job like that job in particular, that's a great example of, we worked 6 days a week, at least every week. We were working a minimum
Yeah.
of 12 and a half hours on site each day. And most days we're having, an hour to 2.5 hour drive each way to work. And it's so hard to get somebody to understand that hasn't done it,
Yeah.
the toll it takes on you. And I know that, we could go on and on and on talking about work, but to start aiming towards wrapping this up, the physical toll that just the work takes on you.
Oh yeah.
I'm 51. I'm a little bit older than you. I've had 3 hernias repaired. I've had a complete shoulder.
I'm so sorry, man. I got to Can we take a quick break?
I'm going to drop right back
Go
in
ahead.
because this is exactly what we were talking about. Okay, we just took a little break so Snake could take a phone call. And I was talking about having surgeries, all from work-related activity over the years. Yeah, three hernias, shoulder rebuild. I just had a meniscus done, and Snake just took a call for a surgery tomorrow.
Yeah. I am having a surgery on my spine tomorrow. I have to get a disc replaced. So, that was the pre-op, uh, the nurse practitioner, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm butchering that, so I'm sorry for anybody who does this. But telling me that, I have to stop, I should have stopped taking all, I had to stop taking all the meds and stuff
yeah.
beforehand because I guess they go in through the front. And so I have to go get a bunch of colon blow and
Oh yeah.
clean out
Yep.
clean
It's
out the
fun
system.
stuff.
So yeah, and that was her going through all that stuff and when I have to be there and blah 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 and I got to be there at 5:30 in the morning so they can cut it in.
So the moral of the story is stay in school, kids.
Yeah, the whole
If you,
thing I talked about earlier when I said college is bullshit. Well,
uh,
if you don't want to have surgery in your 40s and 50s, then
yeah,
probably
I
there's
just,
plenty of
I
people.
just think it's evidence of a life well lived is all I
I
think.
mean, it's going to happen anyway. I mean, a lot of it I will attribute to just improper body mechanics.
Yeah,
It's like if anything, learn how to properly bend over and pick things up.
It's so simple.
Like, and honestly, it wasn't until recently because I've been having problems with my back for years, and it wasn't until recently I got online, and now there's so much stuff available with YouTube and all that stuff. I
Yeah.
found this really great physical therapist online, Jeff Cavalier. Great,
Yeah.
great, ton of great information. He's just, one among thousands, I'm sure, but it was easy for me to understand what he was talking about and grasp it. But just watching him explain how to properly bend over and do things, I was like, I've been doing it wrong my entire life. And I'm in my 40s. And I'm just like, so it's just one of those things that learn how to bend over, kids. Learn how to bend.
Work work smart,
Yeah.
not hard.
Yeah.
All right, we need to start wrapping up. So I want to get through a few more quick
Sure.
things. First, I'll go with the easy softball. Anybody who finds out you work in the film business, I know I get asked this question a lot, and I like to ask it of those who are also in the business. Not who your least favorite actors you've worked with are, but who are your favorite
There's a
ones
few of
you've come
those.
across? Yeah,
Um, the least favorite. No,
yeah,
but I listened to you ask
yes,
Bob this
Bob.
question on when you interviewed him, and what did he say? Tom Hanks was one of them.
Yeah, we worked
I
with
I,
Tom
I
Hanks.
have not had the pleasure of meeting Tom Hanks, but one stands out to me when you asked him that question. In my mind, stood out instantly was Sam Elliott. Um,
I was hoping you said that because
he
he was.
was such a delight as a human, and
Yeah,
for I mean, God, he's almost 80, isn't he?
I I think more
Or
than
he
that,
may be in
possibly.
his 80s. I don't
Yeah,
know. But when I met him, I actually met him briefly previously in passing through friends, but it was like a quick, he wouldn't have remembered.
yeah,
I remembered because it's Sam Elliott. But
yeah,
we were on when we were on 1883 when Dan was doing the double up units,
yep.
and I was there. For people who don't know, as rigging grips, you're not on set. You're not around the actors often.
If you are, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't see actors or the cameras or anything like that. It's
Yeah,
very rare that we're occupying the same space.
yeah,
Um, so, I mean, 1880, we've been shooting for months, and we were in
yeah,
Montana. I think we're in
yep,
Livingston, Montana. Yeah, up in the crazy mountains. A really beautiful area. God, it was gorgeous. Um, but we're up there, and this is literally my first day on set after months of working on the show, and he had been there for months, and I'm assuming he saw me and didn't recognize me, but he was walking by me. He stopped. What's your name? And I was just like, oh, hey, I'm Snake. And he was like, Snake? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, Sam, damn glad to meet you. And I was like, hey, man, nice to meet you too. And that was it. Cut to the end of the show, the very last night of shooting. It was a night scene. It was a sensitive scene, so not a lot of people were around. I was there helping just hold. It was windy, so I was there just helping because it was an extra hand. I hadn't seen Sam since that encounter, and he was walking by, looks over and sees me, goes, "Hey, Snake, how you doing?" Remembered my name, just said hi. Was very delightful to say hi to. Just a delightful person. And on top of that, I saw him on set previous, just as an observer. I was just observing him. And you want to talk about set etiquette? I mean, he never had I didn't see him ever sit in a director's chair. He just had an apple box,
no, yeah,
and which is, for those of you who don't know, is just a wooden box with a handle. And so he'd just sit on that. And he was having a conversation with somebody. Somebody's talking to him, and he's looking up. He just sat down. He was, just talking with him. And somebody was coming by with gear, and he didn't look. He didn't stop his conversation. He kept lifting. He leaned forward, picked up his box, and moved back and sat back down and kept talking. And the person walked right through. And I was just like, holy shit, what a pro. Like, what a pro. And, just
yeah.
like from what I could observe, just zero ego and just a really nice guy.
I only had a couple interactions with him, but the first time I talked to him, we were just standing out at Silverado, one of the places in Texas, one of the ranches we were at, and it was a billion degrees, and we're out in the middle of a pasture with no shade in sight. We're waiting on a set deck to do something, and he just turned and looked at me, said, "It's hot." I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is." That was our first interaction.
Yeah, it was hot. That fool was wearing wool the whole
I
time.
know, head to toe, coat over a vest,
It
over
was
a shirt.
no
Yeah,
joke.
yeah, and stayed out there in between
Yeah.
takes
I
most of
mean,
the time.
talk about just a badass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like he'd done it before.
Yeah, weird.
So, what gets you out of bed today? Like beyond gripping, what are you excited about moving forward in life?
Uh, it's definitely not gripping. That's one thing this strike kind of gave me was some perspective. Sitting at home for 6 months or so, I leaned into not gripping, because you get lost in the world we live in, the world we work in. It's like
Yeah,
it's such a fast paced and nonstop train, and you just kind of get lost in that movement. And you're like, yeah, this is what I do. It's okay. It's just kind of like, but when you're forced to stop and not do it for 6 months, um, as we were during the strike, I had to, I was like, well, shit, what do I do? And I leaned into just being home and being domestic. I mean, we have like 24 chickens now. And I mean, I started growing things. I built a grow tower. I built my wife this this like kind of greenhouse ish room in our house, with, you know, ran power. It just being home, honestly, um, and spending time with my wife and my dogs and just doing shit here, man. I honestly just want to be home and do stuff here. I don't want to leave. The farthest I want to go is Home Depot. And then, I want to be home, man. It's awesome. I love it. I've turned
that's
into a
awesome.
domestic, boring person.
That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So you kind of answered what is usually my last question. What my kids, and I don't know how it first started. I said this in Clint's episode, and anytime that one of us does something that makes one of our boys happy, our older boy Patty started saying that really made my heart happy, or that made my heart smile. But I think you just kind of answered that in saying what you did about being home with your family,
Yeah,
or with Emily and Kevin and what's her name?
Maggie. Yeah,
Maggie. Sorry, Maggie.
it's okay.
The
Um,
dogs.
yeah, that does make my heart smile, just being with my family. So
Awesome. Well, I think I told this story, and I don't know, maybe I didn't in one of the other episodes about um, having a conversation with somebody being frustrated. It was in the first episode about being frustrated about trying to build a relationship with my dad early in my life, and it didn't meet my expectations, and having that reality of a friend saying to me, well, do you want that relationship in your life? And I said, yeah, of course, that's what I'm talking about. And he said, well, then just try to be a good son.
yeah,
And for me, in all relationships, I have to show up. I have to play my part. I have to, if I want a relationship in my life, I have to do the active part of it.
absolutely.
And, and like, I have tried to do that in all areas of my life, and the connections I have, all the friends that I'm grateful for, that's my ownership in that. And like I could drive out to California for my wife's work thing, that conference that we went out for last week, and not give you a call, even though we are 30 minutes away. But
Totally,
I
totally.
did because you matter to me. You're my friend, and I want to continue to further that relationship and
Well,
that connection.
likewise,
So
man. And I'm really honored and glad you guys stopped by. It was wonderful meeting your wife, who I've heard a lot
it was a
about,
blast.
and your two boys, who are a nonstop roller coaster ride.
Thank you so much for introducing them to Nerf guns, because
You're
now
welcome.
they got Nerf guns, and I got shot in the eyeball this
Oh,
morning.
sorry.
So thanks for that.
There's
But
nothing for kids to do around here except for that. Here you go.
yeah.
So,
All right. I really appreciate it, buddy.
hell yeah.
I
So
love
do
you,
I.
Snake.
Thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
was a blast.
Awesome.